Hey, welcome back Push Rodders. These are my top 10 fuel economy tips. Now before we get into the video, if you've got any more tips other than the ones that are in the video, put them down in the comments. Let's get into it. Number 1. Tyre pressures. It's always a good idea to check them regularly. If you have trouble trying to find what PSI to pump them up to, it's usually indicated on the side of the tyre or in your door jambs with a little sticker, or in the glove box door, or even your logbooks or your operator's manual, whatever it is for your vehicle. Now there'll be a few honourable mentions as well, like this one. If you're contemplating on running bigger tyres and wheels and all the rest of it, just remember you've got more rolling resistance to overcome and heavier wheels and tyres and all that sort of stuff too. So it's just another thing to think about. Number 2, if you're carrying around excess weight that you don't really need to be carrying around, now might be a good time to give your car a good clean out. If you're only using a roof rack maybe once a year or every 6 months or something like that, might be a good idea to take it off the car. Less weight to carry around, less wind resistance, better fuel economy. Cars these days with all the mod cons and electric heated seats and electric this and electric that and all the rest of it, and also too, air conditioning. Maybe either turn them to a lower setting so they're not working as hard, or even turn them off. That way you're not loading up the alternator or the electrical system. Again, the engine's not working as hard driving the alternator to pump more electricity through the whole system. Also too, window tint. Now, you'd reckon it doesn't really have much to do in common with fuel economy. You get a few degrees cooler inside the cabin of the car, it's less you've got to work the aircon or have it as cold to try and cool the cabin of the car down. Driving style. So if you're that guy going living your life stoplight at a time, flat out on the gas, then hard on the brakes, it's hey, you might be your own worst enemy trying to achieve fuel economy if you're doing that sort of thing. So just have a bit of a sit back and have a look at your driving style and correct it accordingly. Take off a lot more smoother and try and anticipate lights and traffic conditions and all that sort of stuff. Who knows? It'll definitely work in your favour. Look, I know petrol prices have been going through the roof of late, and touch wood, they've actually come down a little bit in my area, which is nice. Try and pick the best fuel for your car. The cheap cruddy fuel, you're going to find you're going to be using more of it, because especially in modern engines with computers, it's going to sense that it doesn't have the octane rating and might start pinging or whatever. It'll take ignition timing out of it and you'll find it runs sluggish, which then you're going to want to put your foot down harder and blah blah blah. You get the gist. Conversely, if you're like Casper here, which we're in now, if I put 98 octane in, it runs no better than what 95 octane does. So try and pick the best suitable fuel for your car. Another top tip for those of you that don't have ethanol compatible cars, you have a go at putting say half a tank or a full tank of E10. Here in Australia we've got E10 and E85. That alcohol content in the E10 will start to clean all the varnish and all the gunk and rubbish out of your fuel system. Go through your injectors, give those a bit of a clean, and also your carby. Just be careful, don't do it all the time. About every 6 months usually does it quite nicely. Essentially what you're doing is what you'd be doing if you went out to the local parts store and bought one of the fuel system cleaners. And the active ingredient that is high strength alcohol. Servicing. Regular servicing, utilising thinner oils, whether it be in your engine or your transmission, automatic or manual. transfer cases, diffs, all that sort of thing can also be a big help. Plug gaps, if you try and gap them on the bigger side of the factory setting, the extra spark energy that is exposed to the air and fuel mixture, it may only be a millisecond more, but it's a millisecond quicker that air and fuel gets lit off, and you probably achieve a little bit more of a complete burn, which always helps. And also to stuff like wheel bearings, brakes dragging, all that sort of thing. It's always a good thing while you're servicing, go through all that sort of stuff, check it all. MAF sensors and oxygen sensors. So it's always a good idea to give these a good clean every now and again. They run a little hot wire in them, so they run voltage through a little wire, and the more voltage it takes to keep a wire at a set temperature indicates how much air is going to the computer, indicates how much air is going through, and adjusts the fuel accordingly. Now, if this thing is, if the little wire is dirty and all the other and gunk all over it, it's going to be working harder full stop, and it's not going to be as efficient. So a little bit of electrical contact cleaner always works a treat, also on the plug as well. And the same goes for your oxygen sensor. You know, check the plug, make sure the wires haven't been sitting on a hot manifold or part of the exhaust system or something like that. And also too, if you've got a code reader or a little computer you can plug into your car, if that's applicable to you, just go through it all and just make sure you haven't got any engine faults or faults with these sensors. Vacuum lines and distributors. So look, even most modern cars, if not all of them, have still got vacuum lines of some description. It's always worth checking, because you might end up with a car that's not running right, or a high idle condition or something like that on the more modern cars. Also too, on the older cars, you know, you've got your distributors and your vacuum advances and all that sort of stuff. Make sure you got good vacuum to your vacuum advance. Help with you know, cruising and all that sort of stuff. You know, you're going along the freeway, you're up on cruise, all that sort of deal. All helps with fuel economy. Also too, you guys with distributors, put a little vacuum pump on this and make sure your vacuum advance is actually working and it's not all gummed up. Now if I can, there's a little plate in there, not that you can probably see it, and that moves. Now if this little thing's not if this little vacuum canister or whatever you want to call it isn't working, this little plate isn't advancing and retarding the timing as it should do. So it's always worthwhile putting a little vacuum pump onto the thing there and make sure it works. Now for you diesel owners out there, especially the turbo intercooled diesel engines, whether it be in a car or a 4x4, check all your intercooler piping. If it's pulling air past one of the seals or the joins in the intercooler piping, the oxygen sensor, especially with the new motors, will most likely sense it's getting more air, and the computer will sense all this and adjust the fuel accordingly and just keep pumping more and more fuel in, which isn't really good for your exhaust gas temperatures, and it's a good way of burning out a piston or a tip of an injector or something like that. If you're running a DPF or catalyst, cat converter, you'll end up burning one of those out, or stuffing it completely, or even just burning out an oxygen sensor too, because it's just getting way too hot. So it's just another thing for you guys to check. Pumping losses. Essentially, when we talk pumping losses, we're talking about how hard it is for the engine to, for the lack of a better word, draw in the incoming air, and also how hard it is for it to get rid of all the exhaust gases, the heat, the soot, unburnt fuel, all that sort of stuff out of the exhaust. Now all around us we've got 14.7 pounds per square inch of atmospheric pressure, or PSI. When that piston moves down the cylinder, all the atmospheric pressure is trying to get through the air intake, air inlet, through all the ducting, air filters, past the valve into the cylinder where the low pressure area is. We can make that easier by choosing high flow air filters, appropriate size intake ducting and piping and all that sort of thing. And then on the other side of that, exhaust systems. Better free-flowing exhaust systems to scavenge the cylinder better. Try and draw out the rest of that unburnt fuel, the soot, gases, all that sort of stuff. And we can do that by, like I said, headers, appropriate pipe sizing, good high flow mufflers. Now look, if you don't have a lot of money, a good high flow air filter and a high flow muffler is a good place to start, and you will see the difference. Now if anyone says to you back pressure it's good for the engine, not really, no. What back pressure is a failure for the engine or the exhaust system, or both, to evacuate the cylinder enough properly, and there's still remaining gases and heat, unburnt fuel, all that sort of contaminants that are left in the cylinder that will contaminate the next clean air fuel charge, which means you won't get as better burn or burn the fuel as much, which means you're not going to get the heat energy out pushing on the piston. Alrighty, that's it. I hope you got something out of that. Hopefully you can put a bit of that into practice and achieve a bit better fuel economy and a few more extra dollars in your pocket. What are you waiting for? Go get your hands dirty. I'll see you next video.